Hey man, listen, it's one R, two L's. And I told y'all I was about to get into the most exclusive, most impactful hip hop albums of my life. And there's quite a few, but I have to start with talking about this album that helped shape and mold me as a man. So what I'm doing here is I'm talking about the albums that helped create R. Lamar. These are the albums that may not be the greatest of all time, but they're the greatest in my life, and they've had the greatest influence on who I am. So the first album I want to talk about is an album that came out in 1991, October 29th, 1991. I actually did some research. I don't remember that date. But around this time, I'm 13 years old, and an album drops called Death Certificate by Ice Cube. Now, everybody knows who Ice Cube is. Member of the legendary group NWA, wrote most of the Straight Outta Compton album, wrote the Eazy-E album, him and D.O.C. So he was the prolific writer who stepped off from the group because they didn't have the business right with Jerry Heller, and, went on to make his first album, America's Most Wanted, in 1990. That's a really good album. It's a critically acclaimed classic. A lot of people love that album. I particularly love Death Certificate, though. I liked America's Most Wanted, America with the triple Ks. It was a great album, and it was totally different from NWA. The thing I want to really point out when it comes to Ice Cube and his really early works was NWA was like more shock value about what's going on in the streets. But America's Most Wanted and most definitely Death Certificate was more about the consciousness of what was created by this environment, the awareness of what was going on. So this man was like 22, 23 years old and writing about subjects like, one of the songs on the album is called I Want to Kill Sam, and it's about the U.S. Army and how they draft people. Another song is Black Korea, which talks about how, we don't own nothing in our own neighborhoods. And so this album was called Death Certificate, which is about the lifetime of a black man. This was incredibly insightful for a man of his age who he hadn't lived a whole lot, but he's seen a whole lot, and he was aware of a whole lot. And it just was an incredible album, and a lot of it for me at 13 years old, it was over my head. Probably one of my favorite songs of all time is on that album, A Bird in a Hand, and it's about drug dealing. So the difference between this album and a lot of stuff like what you hear today is it's about the lifestyle, but it's about the environment that created the lifestyle, the oppression that created drug dealing, the environment that created the mentality that goes into somebody who decides to sell drugs. Not like I'm selling drugs, I'm turning up and I'm getting this money. No, it was, the lyrics to Bird in the Hand start out like fresh out of school because I was a high school grad. Got to get a job because I was a high school dad. Wish I got paid by rapping to the nation, but that's not likely. So here's my occupation. So it was just that kind of mentality or that kind of narrative about the mentality of a man working at McDonald's. He's fresh out of high school for whatever reasons, is trying to figure out how to pay the bills, and this is his option. He's graduated high school, and the song goes on to tell the story of how he decides, I'm going to sell drugs. It's not just he woke up one day and said, I'm going to sell drugs, but he was a father, a young father, not with the wisdom and the life skills to go out and do a whole lot. And so the whole album talks about like what creates young men being fathers, and there's songs like Horny Little Devil and it's just a really good album. Horny Little Devil is about the obsession with African Americans, and the album took a lot of flack. It took a lot of criticism, and a lot of people thought it was racist. Don't get me started on black people being racist, but a lot of people thought the album was anti-Semitic and just a hate album, and it wasn't. It was about the black life and the black experience and the black environment. And so Death Certificate, to me, while a lot of it I didn't understand till growing up later, but a lot of it was implanted in me, what it means to be black and the conditions that I'm growing up in, especially in poor black neighborhoods. So this your man 1R2Ls, and I just want to hit y'all about Death Certificate. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. It's Ice Cube, and Ice Cube's career changed through time. Like, he wasn't always so politically conscious later in his music, but I love the politically conscious Ice Cube. I love NWA, but the Ice Cube Death Certificate album may be one of the top 2 or 3 most impactful albums of my time. And so, you know, I just want y'all to understand, like, this music really impacts people. I started doing this series because there's a lot of kids and listening to music, and they're really heavily influenced by music. So beware parents of what your children are listening to. Like, my parents didn't know I was listening to Death Certificate, but shout out to my man Uncle Scotty, who put that in my hand at a very early age, and had a lot of filthy words on it. But hey, man, it was a accurate description of what was going on. It talked about the riots of '92 before they even happened, and it just really made a lot of sense to me as I got older. But as a younger, it was knocking. It was funky. The beats were good, and it was just a really good story of the black life. And I came to the conclusion that, talking to my man Juan, say the greatest albums are always the storytelling albums. So anyway, it's your man 1R2Ls. I got to get out of here. There's a couple things I left off about this album, like the fact that it's got probably the greatest diss song ever, No Vaseline, when he single-handedly took out NWA, which was the biggest group at the time. One man single-handedly took them out. But I'm excited, can y'all tell? But I love this album. If you haven't heard it, go check it out. It's called Death Certificate. It came out in 1991. Yes, I'm partial to the 90s. This was an album that impacted me heavily as I was going into high school. I was just a young man trying to figure things out, and this album helped me see a lot of things in the world. So peace and love, 1R2Ls. I got to go. Holla.